Let me ask you something real quick. Have you ever walked into a house, your childhood home, holding a bottle of wine and a pie you baked from scratch, heart pounding because maybe, just maybe, this Christmas would be different, only to have the door open and your own mother look at you like you were a stranger? Yeah, that was me. My name's Isla Monroe, and if you're watching this, just know this isn't one of those cheesy holiday stories where misunderstandings get wrapped up in ribbons and forgiveness comes easy. Nah. This is one of those revenge stories, the quiet kind, the kind where truth is the only gift that gets unwrapped. I stood on the front porch of my parents' house, arms full, pie in one hand, a bottle of Merlot in the other, snowflakes catching in my lashes like glitter I didn't ask for. The scent of cinnamon, cedar, and roasted ham drifted through the cracks of the door like some kind of sick joke. Everything smelled like childhood, like comfort, like lies. For a second, I let myself imagine it. Mum opening the door, smiling through mascara-smudged eyes, saying, "Oh, honey, we didn't think you were coming, but we're so glad you did." Dad grabbing the wine, ushering me in with his usual, "You always bring the good stuff, kid." The fireplace crackling, my brother Jeremy waving me over, laughter that didn't have sharp edges. But when the door finally creaked open, none of that happened. Instead, my mother, Vivian Monroe, stood there, perfectly styled in her burgundy holiday dress, lips tight, eyes scanning me like I'd just stepped out of a snowdrift and dragged in something filthy. Behind her, I could see silhouettes, figures gathered around a candlelit table, wine glasses raised mid-toast, my father seated at the head. She didn't even step aside. She just blinked, tilted her head. "We weren't expecting you," she said, voice dipped in sugar but served cold. I swallowed. "I texted you 3 days ago. I said I'd be here. I brought dessert." She gave a smile, one of those small, tired ones that says everything but means nothing. "Well, tonight is for immediate family only." I blinked. "I am immediate family." She didn't flinch, didn't apologize, didn't even glance at the pie in my hands or the gift bag at my feet. Behind her, my father, Douglas, appeared. For one hopeful second, I thought maybe he'd say something. Step in, correct her, do anything. But he didn't. He just stood there, looking at me like a problem he didn't want to solve. My breath hitched in the cold. "So, you're not letting me in?" Mum pulled the door a little closer to her body. "It's better this way. You've always been a little sensitive during the holidays. We didn't want tension." There it was, that old familiar line they used every time they needed an excuse for leaving me out. "We just thought maybe you had other plans," she added, almost as an afterthought. "It didn't seem like you were very involved this year. I transferred $5,000 to Dad's account last month so you could fix the roof," I said, my voice quiet but cutting. "I've been plenty involved." That made her blink. For a moment, just a flash, something flickered in her expression, but then it vanished, replaced by practiced poise. "That's not what this is about," she said sharply. "Let's not turn this into some kind of scene." "God forbid someone ruins your matching dinner napkins," I muttered. Vivian looked over her shoulder, as if making sure no one was watching, though, truthfully, no one was. No one inside even knew I was here. I could have dropped dead on the steps, and they would have just assumed I flaked like always. She sighed. "You always make things about you, Isla." And with that, she closed the door. Not slammed, not with fury, but with that same cold, practiced distance I'd been raised on. The pie in my hand suddenly felt too warm, the wine too heavy. I stood there on the icy step, blinking into the darkness, wondering how the people who made me could so easily pretend I didn't exist. For a second, I stayed, just long enough to register the ache between my ribs, the kind of pain that doesn't scream but settles in deep, like frostbite. Then I nodded, just once, turned, and walked away. Utro kua chung want. Noitip ve kamsuk. You'd think that would be the end of it, right? Me, walking away, licking my wounds, trying to convince myself that maybe next year would be better. But no, because 10 minutes later I was halfway down Main Street when my phone started buzzing. It was my dad. And when I picked up, the panic in his voice made me realize something. They didn't just forget me. They erased me, and I was done being erased. I drove aimlessly at first. The pie was sliding around in the passenger seat, still warm. The wine had tipped onto the floorboard, the bottle clinking every time I hit a bump. I didn't even bother picking it up. I just gripped the wheel like it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. Snow dusted the windshield like it was trying to soften the night, but there's nothing soft about being cut out of your own family. There's nothing gentle about standing in front of your parents' house, gifts in hand, and being told you weren't wanted. I pulled off onto a side street and turned off the engine. The silence felt too loud, the kind that wraps around you and whispers things you've tried not to believe for years, that maybe they never really loved you, maybe they just tolerated you, and even that had an expiration date. I sat there in the dark, hands frozen, breath fogging the glass. The longer I sat, the more it sunk in. They hadn't just forgotten to include me, they planned not to, they chose not to, they opened the door, saw me, and still said no. My phone buzzed violently in the cup holder. For a second, I didn't move, let it buzz again, and again. Then I picked it up. Jeremy. I hesitated. My thumb hovered. I nearly let it go to voicemail, but something in me said, pick it up. Just hear what lie they told this time. I hit answer. His voice was panicked. Isla, where are you? Why didn't you come? My heart stopped. I blinked into the silence. What do you mean? I did. What? I showed up, knocked on the door. Your mum opened it and told me I wasn't invited. Dad stood right behind her. Neither of them said a word to stop it. Silence. Jeremy breathed out a shaky laugh, like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. No, they said you weren't coming, that you had plans with friends, that you declined. I texted 3 days ago, I snapped. I said I'd be there. I even asked what I could bring. She left me on red. Jeremy didn't answer right away. And that pause, that silence, it told me everything. He believed me. I kept going, my voice low and flat. You remember the roof? The leak after the storm? Who do you think paid for the repairs? Another pause, longer this time. I figured it was them, he said. But even as he said it, his voice betrayed him. I paid the contractor directly, I said. They just never told you. Jeremy exhaled like he'd been punched. Jesus! I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Exactly. Then I said something I didn't plan to say, but it fell out, raw and sharp. They didn't forget me, Jeremy. They erased me. There was a beat of silence again. Then he whispered, Come back, please. You need to say this out loud. I shook my head. Why? So they can tell me I'm overreacting again? So they can smile through their teeth while pretending they didn't just shut the door in my face? No, he said, so they have to hear it. And so everyone else does too. And here's where I'm going to pause the story for a second, because I need to ask you, the one watching, have you ever been cut out of your own family's version of events, not forgotten, replaced? Have you ever sat in your car holding a gift you bought with your last paycheck and realised, They never planned on loving you the way you hoped. If you have, say it, drop it in the comments, because I swear, when this happened, I thought I was the only one. But I know I'm not. I didn't answer Jeremy right away. I just sat there, phone pressed to my cheek, watching my breath fog up the window. Then finally, I said, I'll come back, but not for them, for me. And this time, I'm not bringing pie. I'm bringing proof. Because while they've been sipping wine and telling stories where I'm the flake, the problem, the drama, I've been collecting every ignored message, every voicemail, every payment receipt with my name on it. And when I walk back into that house, I'm not coming in as the difficult daughter they love to explain away. I'm coming in as the woman they can't lie about anymore. I put the car in drive. Snow kept falling, lights blurred past like ghosts, but this time I wasn't leaving with shame in my chest. I was coming back, not to fit in, but to show them what they'd pushed out. And they weren't ready, but I was. I don't remember turning the car around. 1 minute I was parked under a flickering street lamp, staring at my hands like they might explain something. The next, I was pulling into my parents' driveway for the second time that night, except this time, I wasn't holding a pie. I wasn't holding hope. I was holding proof. You know that feeling when something shifts in your chest? Not pain, not rage, just this solid weight that says, we're done pretending now? That's what was sitting in the passenger seat beside me. I walked up the steps slowly. No gifts, no smile. Just my phone, clutched tight like a weapon I didn't want to use but would if I had to. The house still smelled like sugar and warmth and every Christmas I used to believe in. Laughter still spilled through the windows like nothing was wrong, like I'd never been there, like I never mattered. I knocked again. But this time, it wasn't Mom who answered. Jeremy opened the door. His eyes widened when he saw me, then darted back over his shoulder like he was worried someone would catch him talking to me. "Hey," he said softly. "You really came." "Yeah," I said, brushing snow off my sleeves. "And I brought the receipts." He blinked. "Wait, like literal receipts?" I didn't answer. I just stepped inside. The air hit me like a wave. Warm, cinnamon sweet, too many candles. I could hear the murmur of conversation, forks on plates, the clink of wine glasses. Somewhere in the back, someone was laughing way too loud. I stepped out of my boots slowly, deliberately. Jeremy closed the door behind me and whispered, "You sure about this?" "No," I said. "But I'm done waiting for someone else to be." As I rounded the corner into the dining room, the hum of conversation halted like someone had pressed pause. Heads turned. Forks froze mid-air. My mother was mid-sentence, holding court at the far end of the table, a glass of wine in one hand and that familiar air of self-appointed elegance on her face. My father sat beside her, looking very much like a man who'd learnt to disappear in plain sight. Their faces didn't register surprise. They registered inconvenience. Vivian's smile wavered. "Isla, what are you doing here?" "I live 20 minutes away," I said calmly. "I RSVP'd 3 days ago. I even brought dessert." A few people glanced around awkwardly. Someone cleared their throat. My mum blinked once. "We thought you had other plans." "That's funny," I said, reaching into my coat pocket, "because you left me on red, and I have the messages to prove it." I held up my phone, opened the texts, let the screen speak for itself. Sent. "Hey, I'll be there. Let me know what to bring." Read. Thursday, 2:17 p.m. No reply. Vivian's smile cracked just slightly. "We must have missed it." "No," I said. "You didn't. But let's not stop there." I swiped again. Here's the voicemail I left Dad, confirming I was coming. The one I left right after I wired $5,000 into your account to fix the roof. You remember that, right? The room went completely still. My mother's eyes narrowed. This isn't the time or place. It's the perfect time, I cut in, because I heard what you told them, that I wasn't coming, that I had other plans, that Jeremy paid for the repairs. Jeremy straightened in his seat. Wait, what? Mum blinked rapidly, suddenly flustered. Well, you were always so private about things. I didn't want to make you uncomfortable. No, I said. You didn't want me visible. I turned to the table, holding the phone a little higher. And just to be clear, this isn't about the money. It's about the fact that I was here every time something broke, every time you needed help, every time you needed someone to blame, and still you looked me in the face and shut the door. There's a kind of silence that feels like judgment, and this wasn't aimed at me anymore. This time, they were the ones shrinking in their chairs. My aunt lowered her fork slowly. One of my cousins looked down at his plate like it was suddenly too bright to look at. Jeremy was the one who broke the tension. Mom, you lied. Vivian opened her mouth, closed it, glanced at my father like he might save her. He didn't. Douglas just stared at the table, cheeks pale, hands clenched. I didn't lie, she said, barely holding composure. I managed expectations. I laughed once, sharp and bitter. Yeah? Then manage this. I tapped my phone, played the voicemail. My voice. Hey, Mom, just confirming I'll be there Christmas night. Got the pie cooling, wine picked out, can't wait to see everyone. Then silence, then her voice, muffled but clear. From the other side of the door just hours ago. We didn't invite her. She'll get the message when she sees the lights off. I let the recording play, no yelling, no dramatics, just truth. And it landed like a snowball to the gut. Vivian stood frozen. My father looked like a ghost of himself. For once, the table didn't look at me with pity or confusion. They looked at her. Jeremy stood slowly. You made her the villain, and you let us believe it. No one spoke after that, because there was nothing left to say. I didn't stay for dinner. I didn't want their leftovers. I came for one reason, to make sure no one ever said again, well, maybe she just didn't show. No, I showed up. They just locked the door. And now they don't get to control the story anymore. Nobody moved. After I played the voicemail, her voice, my mother's, saying, she'll get the message when she sees the lights off. The room just stalled. No gasps, no outbursts. Just the sound of someone putting down their fork, like it suddenly weighed too much. My mum didn't speak. Her jaw clenched so tight, I thought her teeth might crack. My dad, he looked smaller somehow, like the table had swallowed him. And me? I didn't flinch. Not this time. I wasn't there to beg. I wasn't there to win anyone over. I was just there to make it undeniable. Jeremy stood first. Jeremy. Did you really say that? He asked, eyes pinned on our mom, that she'd get the message that she wasn't invited? Vivian blinked once, twice, the kind of blink people do when their brain is buffering through too many lies at once. It was taken out of context, she muttered. I let out a short, humourless laugh. You didn't know anyone was recording, so it was just context. She's twisting this, my mum snapped, suddenly loud, her voice hitting a pitch only liars reach when the walls close in. She's always had a flair for dramatics. I turned to the table. My aunt, my uncle, 2 cousins, people who had known me my whole life but never really looked too closely. They were now watching her, not me, watching her unravel. I'm not the one who lied about who paid for the roof, I said evenly. Dad shifted in his seat. That's when I turned to him. You knew, I said. Not a question, a statement. He didn't argue. I transferred the money to your account. I paid for the repairs. You called to thank me, then you let her stand here and praise Jeremy like he was some hero. Dad's voice cracked. I thought you didn't want it to be a thing. I didn't, I said, suddenly more tired than angry. But I also didn't expect you to pretend I didn't exist. He swallowed hard, looking like a man standing in the wreckage of his own cowardice. I failed you, he said quietly. I nodded. Yes, you did. There it was, no screaming, no breakdown, just truth. And sometimes truth is heavier than rage. Vivian slammed her napkin down and stood up. Is this what you wanted, Isla? To humiliate me in front of my family on Christmas? No, I said. I wanted to be at the table. You're the one who made it about sides. She looked around the room, desperate for someone to back her up. No one moved. Even the kids, normally too young or too tuned out to care, were watching with wide, uneasy eyes. You've always made everything about you, she tried again, but it landed flat. I didn't make this about me, I said softly. You did, when you decided your comfort was worth more than my presence. Then I looked around at the rest of the table. I don't need you to like me. I don't need anyone to clap for me. But I will not keep pretending I haven't been erased from every version of this family's history you've been writing. Jeremy stood up again. I knew something was off. I just didn't want to believe it. My cousin Nora spoke up, voice shaking. Last year, you told us Isla didn't send anything for Dad's retirement, but I remember seeing your name on the card and thinking, why did she write from Jeremy? I nodded once. She rewrites me out of everything, and no one ever questioned it. Vivian's face was pale now, not out of guilt, out of being exposed. You're being dramatic, she tried one more time. No, Jeremy said, she's being honest. And then, finally, the moment I never thought I'd see, my father turned to her and said flatly, Get out. The room gasped. Vivian froze like she hadn't heard him right. Douglas didn't blink. You don't get to make her invisible anymore, he said. Not here, not again. Vivian looked around the room, still hoping for a lifeline. But there was none. She grabbed her purse, didn't say goodbye, didn't slam the door, just walked out like smoke fading into winter. And the second the door clicked shut behind her, the tension in the room didn't come from me being there anymore. It came from the fact that they'd finally seen what I'd been carrying for years. After dinner, Dad pulled me aside, into the hallway where no one else could hear. He looked wrecked, like a man realizing the foundation of his house had been built on silence and complicity. I let her do it, he said, again and again. You didn't stop her, I replied. He nodded. I should have asked why. I didn't say anything. What do you say to that? Sometimes you just let them sit in the truth. That night, for the first time, I didn't feel like a visitor in my own bloodline, and they didn't see me as the problem. They saw the space I'd been pushed out of, and the weight of what filled it instead. Next time I walked through a door, it would be mine, and I wouldn't need permission to take my seat. I didn't go to sleep that night, not because I was upset, not because I was spiraling or trying to replay every word. I stayed awake because, for the first time in my life, I felt seen, not pitied, not tolerated, seen. I curled up in the old twin bed in my childhood bedroom, wrapped in a blanket I hadn't touched since high school. Everything smelled like dust and lavender and ghosts I'd long stopped naming. On the nightstand was a framed photo I hadn't looked at in years, me at 12, holding a science fair ribbon, grinning too big. Behind me, barely visible, was my mum pretending to wipe tears from her eyes. Back then, I thought she was proud. Now, I think she just didn't want anyone else to clap for me. Downstairs, I could hear Jeremy and Dad cleaning up. It was quiet, but not awkward.
The kind of quiet that feels like rebuilding something small but real. At 1:12 a.m, my phone buzzed. Group chat. Family rebuild, no lies, started by Dad. One by one, names popped up. Jeremy, Aunt Laura, Cousin Nora, even Uncle Mike, who usually only texts in emojis and dad jokes. My heart beat fast as the first messages came in. Jeremy, we owe you more than a text, Nora. She always dimmed you, never again. Aunt Laura, I always felt something was off. I'm sorry I didn't ask. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was screaming into a void. The next morning, I found my mum's Christmas gift to Dad, still sitting under the tree. Silver foil, red bow, perfectly tied. The tag said, to Dad, from both of us. Both of us. Even after everything, even after the voicemail, she still tried to pretend I had nothing to do with anything. Still tried to wrap up the lie in a shiny box with a neat little bow. I didn't unwrap it. I just set it aside. Presentation without sincerity. That was her specialty. By noon, she was already posting online. Snowflake emojis, a blurry photo of a candlelit dinner, captions like, "Sometimes your absence is your power." Letting go of toxicity this season. And I didn't even flinch, because this time her story wasn't sticking. She could try to paint herself as the victim. She could rewrite the script, like she always did, but it didn't matter anymore because this time people had seen the footage, heard her voice, watched her cruelty laid bare in real time. And nobody was buying the performance, not even herself. Dad didn't clap back. He didn't post a think piece or a call-out. He called every single person in the family. He told them the truth, told them he was sorry, told them he finally saw it. And the most common response, we always had a feeling, we just didn't want to believe it. Later that evening, as I helped Jeremy take out the trash, he turned to me and said, "You know, I used to think you were just distant, cold, maybe." I raised an eyebrow. "Gee, thanks." He chuckled, then shook his head. "But now I get it. You weren't cold, you were shut out." And that landed harder than anything else that day, because it was never about being the black sheep. It was about being the only one who saw the house was burning while everyone else just loved the fireplace. I went home the next day, not the childhood one, the one I built myself, quiet, simple, with a porch that catches afternoon light just right. I lit a candle, made coffee, opened the windows, and then I started making a guest list. Not for a Christmas party, not for some revenge dinner, but for New Year's Eve. A table with 12 seats, no both of us tags, no selective memory, just people who had seen me, really seen me, and showed up when it counted. Jeremy, Nora, Aunt Laura. My co-worker, Ashley, who dropped off soup when I had the flu and no one else called. No one asked if my mum was invited. No one danced around it. Her absence said everything. On New Year's Eve, my house glowed with golden lights and quiet laughter. Dad brought wine, Jeremy brought pie, I brought peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from everyone being comfortable, the kind that comes from finally knowing you don't need to beg for a seat when you own the table. When Dad raised his glass and said, "To the daughter who taught us that silence isn't strength," I didn't cry, I just smiled, because I knew. They hadn't just seen me, they'd stopped erasing me. January came and went like a long exhale. No dramatic texts, no guilt-tripping voicemails, no cryptic Instagram quotes with snowflake emojis and passive-aggressive captions about toxic daughters. Just silence. And for the first time in my life, that silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace. I started sleeping better, laughing louder, cooking again, Real meals, not just microwave pasta while standing in the kitchen with my coat still on. There wasn't one big moment that made everything okay, just small ones. Like drinking coffee in the sunlight on my porch without bracing for a message that would twist my stomach. Like waking up on Sunday and realizing I didn't have to explain to anyone why I wasn't calling. Like deleting my mum's number. Not in anger, but in clarity. Because this wasn't about shutting her out. It was about finally letting go of the door she never opened. About a week into the new year, I got an email. No subject line, no greeting, just her name in the sender box. My thumb hovered over delete, but curiosity can be cruel sometimes. I opened it. It said, "I know you think you won, but you don't know what it's like to feel invisible. You were always the favourite. You just didn't notice because you were too busy pretending to be the victim. Someday they'll turn on you too. Don't come running to me." I stared at it for a long time.
Not because it hurt, because it didn't. That was the moment I realised she was still playing a game I had stopped playing. I clicked reply, typed slowly, clearly, carefully. "I used to want your love. Then I wanted your apology. Now I don't need either. I don't need to win. I just needed to stop losing myself every time you needed to feel big. You can stay gone. I'll stay whole." Then I hit send, and I blocked her. Not out of rage, out of finality, because healing doesn't always look like a hug or a heart-to-heart. Sometimes it looks like a clean inbox and a lighter chest. That spring, I mailed out handwritten invitations for a dinner on my birthday. Small, intimate, only people who had shown up when it mattered. 12 envelopes, 12 names. I didn't pause when I skipped hers, because for the first time ever, my table wasn't missing a chair. It had finally made room for me. The night of the dinner, my backyard sparkled with string lights and laughter that didn't come at anyone's expense. Jeremy brought his girlfriend. Dad brought the wine again, same bottle I'd brought to Christmas that never got opened. Ashley brought candles that smelled like lemon and something warm. And I brought myself, fully, no parts hidden, no voice muted, no pretending I was fine while folding myself into someone else's version of me. After dessert, Dad stood up. He didn't clear his throat or stumble this time. He just raised his glass and said, "To the daughter who reminded us that silence isn't strength, and to the woman who made a place for herself when none was offered." We clinked glasses, and I didn't cry, but I did shake a little, because healing doesn't roar. It trembles quietly, then settles into your bones like a truth that's finally been spoken aloud. Later that night, after everyone left, I sat outside alone. Sky full of stars, air still carrying the scent of grilled peaches and laughter. I took out a journal and wrote a letter to my younger self. You were never too much. You were never hard to love. They just didn't know how to hold you without guilt. And now you don't have to keep asking. You get to invite. You get to decide. If you've ever sat at the edge of your own family, wondering if maybe you were the problem, if you've ever been told you're too sensitive, too dramatic, or that you remember things wrong, if you've ever been erased in slow, quiet ways, I see you. And I promise you're not alone. Drop a or a me too in the comments. Or tell me what you wish you could have said at that dinner you were never invited to. Because maybe tonight we finally write ourselves back into the story.